And welcome to the Wednesday, January 7th, 2009 edition of the Investigative Journal. I'm your host, Greg Szymanski, and my guest today is Jim Rothstein. He's a former New York police detective. And let me just tell you a little bit about him. Jim was a former police detective in New York who uncovered sensitive information that Cardinal Spellman, along with high-level officials in the New York state and federal government, were involved in the pedophilia rings that were running rampant in America and still are today. He also had sensitive information regarding the Kennedy assassination, the assassination of Pope John Paul I. All of it has gone down that deep black Jesuit black hole, and to the thanks of an attorney who's still in office in New York, Mr. Morgenthau. And for his valiant work, Jim was given an ultimatum: either you leave the department or we'll kill you. Was basically what happened. He left the department finally, but still researches and works together with a number of parents in this country who are losing their children. One, Johnny Gosch, Jim's tried to help Noreen Gosch get her son back, who's in this pedophilia ring. I know you, after you left the department or forced out of the department by high-level officials who wanted no part of this information and wanted to cover it up for their bosses, you started helping Noreen Gosch, a woman who lost her son to this pedophilia ring, as a private citizen. To update that story, just tell us what happened, why it's common still today and it's covered up, and why there's never been an investigation to the top levels of any of these children that we see on milk cartons every day you go into the grocery store. Go ahead.
Well, this is something that's been going on. I first became aware of it in 1968, and over the years we did many investigations, and when it gets to a certain level in our society and government, these cases are shut down. And in the Johnny Gosch case in particular, the cover-up started long before the kidnapping ever happened. And it was a kidnapping that was done. There was a customer who wanted newspaper boys, and Johnny Gosch was a newspaper boy, and he was the first of 4 boys that were kidnapped who were newspaper boys. The one was Jacob Wetterling, who wasn't a newspaper boy, but the guy that was the newspaper kid in St. Joseph, Minnesota, slipped out of his coat and escaped the abductors, and so the secondary target was Jacob Wetterling, and they grabbed him. And it's nice that I'm on the air with you today, because we just had a big break in the case, and naturally it's being covered up by local law enforcement. It's on the websites right now. It's coming out that a man by the name of Vernon Seitz died in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I personally interviewed Vernon Seitz a number of times, and the information he gave me directly ties to the Wetterling kidnapping, but already the disinformation has started, and they're trying to discredit whatever he said. And the Milwaukee police found child porn on his computers and all kinds of stuff that the local authorities are saying, that's all make-up stuff. So you can see that this hasn't stopped to this day yet, that this is it's just hitting the Internet now.
Right, and you even said that the problem today is worse than it was back when Johnny was kidnapped back in the 80s. Just go over how they abducted him and how the story, how they kept him into their web of pedophilia, and how they tried to sway Noreen Gosch from ever really getting to the truth. Tell us a little bit. Just give us a background on this story again.
Well, this young man was targeted because, like I said, they had a customer for a newspaper boy. How that works is you've got customers out there that they're pedophiles who want a certain type of kid. And once they zero in on it, then the kid is taken. And once Johnny Gosch was grabbed, the cover-up started immediately by the local authorities. They tried to discredit Noreen and harassed her, and at one point when the FBI came to her and tried to tell her what they would do and all this stuff, Noreen understood they were trying to con her, and she took a hot cup of coffee and threw the cup and everything right in the agent's face and told him to quit bullshitting her. And that's what happened there. And that case, to this day, every once in a while we'll get new information. And I've met with the present, or he was 2 years ago, the officer still assigned to the case. and it's common knowledge that they will never, ever investigate that case. And Johnny
so he was abducted when he was about 11 or 12, right?
Yes, 12 years old.
And then instead, Noreen, there was solid evidence at the time, and this is what is an interesting part of the story that needs to be told again. There was solid evidence at the time from a number of eyewitnesses that he was abducted. However, the police gave them the local police gave the abductors a 48-hour window to escape based on the fact that they wouldn't listen to this and said he was a runaway, correct?
Yes, and then not only that is when the Martin boy was kidnapped, they were told that this boy was going to be kidnapped and everything, and they didn't do anything, and the guy was kidnapped and has never been seen again. So you know this is an organized operation, and you've heard me say before that we talk about terrorism in our country. The biggest terrorism we have in the United States right now is the abuse and kidnapping of our children and the failure of the police to investigate.
And what is the reason? Are they just told from the top to just let go of this story, and they just follow along, or how does that work? Do you think? Because you were a New York cop, you know how it works. How did they go about giving that 48-hour window, which you say is all they need? Because once they have 48 hours, you never find these kids, right?
Yeah, it's about 72 hours.
Okay.
If they have them 72 hours, the kid is gone forever. Once in a while, you'll find a kid that does reappear again for, an hour or two, as in the case of Johnny Gosh. And then when the mother tried to tell the police that, they came up with all kinds of things. Well, why didn't he run and you call the cops for that? Well, these kids are controlled in such a way that they know that they can never get back into their normal life. And there's a whole story about how they do that. I personally watched and monitored and interviewed, so we actually saw this happening and how they did it. And it's not very hard to figure out. If you grab a young kid and abuse them and set them up in such a way and tell them the parents sold you and your parents don't want you and all that stuff, the kid is not going to go back to his parents. And I can cite case after case where people who we identified finally where they've been kidnapped years before and finally, through trusting us, told us their story.
Right, so Johnny Gosh, again, that last question regarding the police. So we have this obvious kidnapping, which occurs in many other cases. Eyewitnesses see Johnny being abducted. He's not a runaway. Why don't the local police really do their job? Are they just listening to their bosses above? How does that work?
Many of them do not understand how this all works, and they write it off for all kinds of excuses. Any police officer, FBI agent, or any other agent of any type in this country who takes on a major pedophile case can kiss his career goodbye, because once you do this and you get to a certain level, and I've been contacted by many police officers, federal agents. In fact, I think on one of your shows I told you where after I retired, a FBI agent was sent to me. He was going to be assigned to the new pedophile squad they had set up, and he came to me to find out how far he could go before his career was in jeopardy. So even to this day, it's a death knell for anybody to investigate these cases if it gets into the upper echelon. And like I said, many police officers really don't know what they've got and write it off as runaways. Plus, it's easier to investigate a runaway case than a kidnapping. It's easy.
And once it's a kidnapping, the feds come in, right?
Well, yes, and then even the problems even get bigger, especially if it's a pedophile kidnapping.
Right, easier to cover it up if the feds take control. But what you're saying really is that you can't write off all these police officers. I mean, there are good men out there trying to get to the truth, and we have to remember that.
Many good police officers who tried to investigate this and then find themselves becoming